What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today I wanted to showcase some of the newly buffed Aqua Golisopod in the Ultra League. This pick used to be one of my favorite Pokemon in the entire meta, but I mean recently it hasn't been as good because a lot of things have just been buffed, it's been left in the dust, but because of this new addition, it is so much better as a neutral game Pokemon, and it's a lot of fun to use. So let's get into the battles and see what this team can do. Alright, let's get into the first game of the day. We have our Shadow Steelix as our lead up against a Shadow Galarian Weezing. This is a good matchup, but this could have Overheat, which would be very scary if they do end up landing it. They are staying in here. We go for a Psychic Fangs, but they actually only threw after 6 Fairy Winds, so that is a guarantee. Not going to be an Overheat. I can no-shield this. It does almost nothing. Super effective Psychic Fangs is not only going to do a lot of damage to them, but it's also going to debuff their defense stat here. They let it go. They're staying in for just a second longer, and at this point, I wonder why they're staying in. I also wonder why they didn't bait the Overheat on that first move. I'm assuming it's because they don't actually have it. I no-shield once again, and yet another Brutal Swing is going to be thrown. Our opponent showing one of the trickier Pokemon that we could see here with a Pangoro in the backline. Fortunately, though, with a Psychic Fangs debuff and with this proper switch advantage here, we can go with our Golisopod and try our best to neutralize this Pokemon. In comes a Night Slash almost certainly here. It could have Rock Slide technically, but a lot of these Pangoros, most of them, honestly, are just going to be running Night Slash and Close Combat. We are going to be able to easily survive yet another move, go for an Aqua Jet, try to knock them out, and see how they want to play this out. Night Slash comes through. It does a decent chunk of our HP, but resisting these Karate Chops makes it so they cannot farm us down. Aqua Jet going to be thrown. Is it going to be able to knock out? They are debuffed, but they do opt to shield up the move, and then they make a nice catch on a Lapras. While this is a little bit of an awkward spot to be in right now, I do know that our Jellicent does basically wall all of this energy, right? I can overfarm a lot of energy here too. So while it is a good move, is non-stab, it's Ultra League, things are very bulky. We can survive long enough to build up to another X-Scissor, swap out, and have our Jellicent absorb all of the energy from this Lapras. Sparkling Aria does almost nothing to us. We can go for a Shadow Ball here before they ever try to go, like maybe they have Skull Bash, right? I don't think that's the move to throw, but if they ever go for a Skull Bash, I do not want them to boost their defense stat before we can get that move off. They did CMPS though, so I guess I could have gone for a Hex Sneak there if we so chose to, but because they did go for that CMP and we fell for it at this point, now they can swap out to their Pangoro. I have to shield this up. I know that our Jellicent is a very pivotal Pokemon in this game. I can get a Surf off against this, but they can also get a Night Slash off here in just a second. They are at the move right now, but keep in mind, if they shield this, I can combo play with our Golisopod. Our opponent does not call the combo, which means that they get all of this energy wasted, and now this Aqua Jet should knock out this Pangoro. Aqua Jet comes through. I guess not quite enough to knock out, but it will put them into a range where they're forced to throw energy against our Golisopod. We can farm this down with either our Steelix or our Jellicent, and at this point, it feels like Jellicent is all we need to win this endgame. We have a shield, we have energy, they have a Lapras, they have a very low HP Galarian Weezing. What are they going to do? Our opponent is taking some time to think. They come into that Shadow Galarian Weezing. Obviously, they do have Brutal Swing. I'm going to shield it up. It would do quite a bit of damage to us, and at this point, I can Surf this. I can Thunder Fang down everything if I need to, and we should be in a pretty good spot. They swap, so might as well swap into our Steelix here, go and make them force all of their energy against us, and now at this point, I can finish this game off with our Jellicent. Sparkling Aria does end up knocking us out, but Jellicent is able to easily survive the next move here, get to back-to-back Surf if they don't even throw an attack, and now that Weezing doesn't have any energy, we have back-to-back Surfs, so we should be able to get a nice little endgame sweep here with our Jellicent. GG's to our opponent. Looks like Surf has been reached. Weezing will go down to this charge move, and we are able to barely win this game. And there's the timer. This team is a little bit bulky, so gonna see some timer games here today where it does go to that full 5-minute timer. Okay, Pangoro in the lead. This is exactly the Pokemon we don't want to see here. I'm going to try to maybe dance around this if we can, but this is going to be a very tricky game. I just made a Pangoro team the other day, so it's kind of funny that I'm so weak to it this day. We're going to try our best to go for these Breaking Swipes, see if we can get a debuff. We do get a nice attack drop here, try to drain energy with our Golisopod, but unfortunately for us, not only does our opponent swap out to a Drifloon, which I guess is good for us, but they bank so much energy on that Pangoro. In comes an Aqua Jet. They likely have to shield this up if they want to keep switch, but they let it go. They must know at this point, since I stayed in that lead matchup, that I am ABA weak to Pangoro, and this is going to be a very tricky endgame to try to win. In comes a Shadow Ball. I do properly shield it up here. I have to go for another Aqua Jet, though. If I want to knock them out, they likely will not shield this move at this point, which is a little bit awkward, but if they do come in with that Pangoro once again, we might be in a good spot if we can get an Aqua Jet into them. What is going to come in here? It could be their final Pokemon. It could be Pangoro, and they might try to throw a charge move to knock us out. They do throw a charge move against us. It's likely a Night Slash, and we can survive it, but it will do quite a bit of damage to us. Night Slash comes through. Our opponent is not able to knock us out, so Aqua Jet will be able to be thrown and likely draw the first shield from our opponent. I can't really give them this Karate Chop down, but I can at least get to another Aqua Jet here before they're able to knock us out. They have a ton of energy, though, basically at 100 right now. They're likely committing to a full farm down, and that is extremely scary. I come in with our Shadow Steelix. I'm going to try our best at this point to whittle down this Pangoro as much as we can. We no-shield hoping for a Night Slash bait, but they go straight for the close combat. It doesn't quite knock us out, but now at least their defense is dropped, and if they ever swap out, Jellicent can knock this out with the Surf. This is a very tricky matchup to be in, though, because of how much energy they still have left over on this thing. I have to hope that the final Pokemon is weak to Jellicent, Maybe like a ghost type, I don't know, that we could one-shot with Shadow Ball. That's about our only hope right now. Galarian Weezing, not exactly what we wanted to see here. This is going to have Brutal Swing. It looks like if they had Overheat Sludge, this would be a good matchup, but because they threw after 4, I know for a fact that is a Brutal Swing. It's super effective and not exactly what we want to see. With that said, if I can get the perfect overfarm here, there's a chance I can reach a Surf against this, reach a Surf against that Pangoro if they're not at a Night Slash yet, and maybe we can win this game, but it's going to be a very hard game to win. In comes yet another charge move from this Galarian Weezing. I can do 2 more hexes, go for a Surf, and then I'm only going to be 2 hexes away from my next Surf. So depending on how much energy they have left over on that Pangoro, there might still be a chance. If they're energy dry, we win this game, but if they have energy, then we are not going to. Unfortunately, they did survive that move, so I have to sacrifice our Golisopod. They already had a Night Slash, though, on this Pangoro. Not exactly what you want to see. We end up losing the game. There's way too much energy across the board. We almost came back from it, saying how bad the lead was, but unfortunately, just not able to. All right, next game here, a Golisopod in the lead up against our Shadow Steelix. So our opponent using the same Pokemon I am in the backline, but they have a much different backline to us. They have a Shadow Hippowdon on the safe swap. It took me a second there to kind of react to what I saw here, because Ground is a very unique type in this meta. It could have been like a Shadow Donphan. It could have been a lot of things. It could have been a Hippowdon with basically any fast move in the game. All the Elemental Fang moves could have been used, so it took me a second to react to this, but even with the energy deficit that I'm at here, I should be able to shield this, go for a farm down, and potentially come out of this with a lot of energy. We know there is that Golisopod in the lead, and if they do ever end up taking a Shadow Ball, it's going to do quite a bit to them. I know at this point, this is just a Weather Ball. I can survive. I can go for a full Hex down, and 2 Shadow Balls against Golisopod should either knock them out or come very close to it, might even draw a shield, depending on how our opponent wants to play out this game. In comes the first Shadow Ball. Our opponent opts to let it go. The next one will not actually knock them out, unfortunately, but it will put them as low as can be, basically into 1 or 2 Thunderfang range. In comes the Shadow Ball. Our opponent does opt to let it go, and they come in with a Shadow Donphan. All right, well, it's a good thing Golisopod is such a good answer to this, because our Shadow Steelix wants nothing to do with his Pokemon right now. But I do know Trailblaze is one of the moves this thing can have, so it's going to ramp up its damage here. Despite resisting all of this Mud Slap damage, these boosts are going to make it so this matchup is actually kind of dicey. Luckily, I do have Aqua Jet. I can go for these spammy charge moves, try to come back from our shield deficit here, and even Shadow Claw at this point is kind of ripping through this Donphan's health. Aqua Jet number 2 will likely draw a shield, but we have to keep in mind there is still basically a charge move loaded on that Golisopod. They might try to go for either a catch or a combo play at some point, which could be very tricky. But I do have some energy on Shadow Steelix, and I know that basically with our Shadow Steelix, oh, they do go for a very nice catch here, unfortunately for us. But as I was going to say, our Shadow Steelix at this point is not the worst matchup into this Donphan, as crazy as that is to say, because if they make that play, they clear all their boosts, and because they're running Trailblaze and Body Slam likely, actually I think we might have seen Body Slam, but if that is the charge move that they have, then they have no charging pressure. It's all down to the fast moves, and because Steelix is so bulky, we can just go for a Breaking Swipe, and then actually just Thunderfang down completely against this Ground-type Pokemon. Thunderfang just a little bit too strong for this Donphan. We're able to take them out. GG's to our opponent. All right, next matchup, a Zygarde in the lead. A Pokemon which, honestly, the moveset is so hard to guess. They could have Bulldoze Crunch. They could have Outrage. They could have Earthquake. It might get another move. Maybe it gets like Hyper Beam or something. It could have that too. But, I mean, Steelix isn't the best matchup. It's not the worst matchup here. As long as they're not on Earthquake, it's actually pretty good, especially if you start getting attack drops, which we did get on that first Breaking Swipe. They throw pretty early as well, which likely means either a Crunch or a Bulldoze is going to come through. Bulldoze, a very bad move. No defense drop for them as well. The only reason you'd ever really want to run Bulldoze is if you can get lucky enough to get these defense drops. It is such a weak attack here that Breaking Swipe is going to show them that even though it's non-stab, it's going to do even more damage. We also got a second attack drop there, meaning this next Bulldoze is going to do next to nothing. It does get thrown, and it does like, what, 10% of my HP? They do get the defense drop, though, so it's going to make it so one of my attack drops has been neutralized here. In comes yet another Breaking Swipe. Our opponent likely is going to let this go, and now we're going to neutralize a Pokemon that is a little bit tricky for our backline to face, at least under normal circumstances, because this Pokemon is so incredibly bulky. In comes yet another charge move. I know Bulldoze doesn't knock us out from this range, thanks to the debuff luck that we've had, and Breaking Swipe going to try to knock them out here. We overfarm as much as we can here, but we're about in Dragon Tail down range, and I don't think we're going to reach another move against anything that's going to farm us down here. Breaking Swipe does knock them out. In comes a Galarian Weezing. Non-Shadow, it is a Fairy Wind user, though, so it is going to generate energy so quickly. At this point, our Shadow Steelix is out of the way, which means that our Golisopod is our second best answer to this Pokemon. Sludge is going to be thrown. It does a decent amount, but the non-Shadow on this Weezing makes it so it's not quite a two-shot here from full HP. Aqua Jet will be thrown. It won't one-shot them or anything, but it will do quite a bit of damage if they do let it land. Aqua Jet and Aqua Jet and Sludge, rather, are actually the exact same charge moves, just one is poison, one is water, so very efficient attacks here, and because we are so spammy with these charge moves, it's actually going to be a very good spot for us to be in, especially if they end up safe swapping to a Lapras. Lapras, Probably was hoping when Shadow Steelix was out of the way that was our best answer to this Pokemon, but because I have access to a Jellicent, which resists basically every single charge move that this Pokemon could have, we can just wall all of this energy after overfarming with Golisopod and just make sure we always have energy for that Weezing later on this game. Lapras is not a problem at all. I have a Shadow Ball ready to go against them. If they want to shield this up, they can be my guest. If they no shield as well, that is very good for us. They do use their first shield, and at this point, I'm already at another Shadow Ball. They could technically have Dragon Pulse. They have already shown, though, that they're going to go Sparkling Aria, which is not going to do that much damage. And because this Weezing does come back in here, I might as well shield. This is going to do the most damage left over this game, unless maybe they like Skull Bash or Golisopod. But at this point, we don't really need Golisopod once this Weezing goes down. We can go for one Aqua Jet. We can go for another one in just a second. And our opponent is going to have nowhere to hide. Weezing goes down. We have X-Scissor ready to go against Lapras. And we might even be able to reach another X-Scissor before we end up getting completely farmed down. Our opponent does go for that shield on the move there. They go for a charge attack against us. If this is a Sparkling Aria, there's actually a small chance we can survive the fast moves and reach another X-Scissor. It's going to be close here, but Golisopod hanging on with 1 HP, reaching the X-Scissor, knocking out Lapras. Well, probably knocking out. Let's see, do they survive this? They do on like 1 HP as well, but a full Hex down can happen. And once again, there is that timer, not quite dictating the game, but coming very close. Next matchup, once again, a Golisopod in the lead. A very fun Pokemon in Ultra League here, but they do have access to Aqua Jet, and as we know, that is a very efficient charge move. In comes likely the Aqua Jet here after 5. I'm going to shield this up, just overfarm as much energy as I can, just in case I need my Steelix for the backline. Our opponent comes in with a Cobalion, a Pokemon which obviously our Jellicent would love to see, especially if we end up catching a Sacred Sword. This is going to do absolutely nothing, waste all of their energy, and now our Jellicent can just absorb these double kicks all day, force them to throw less efficient moves like Stone Edge, and overfarm as much as we can, potentially just in case that Golisopod does ever come back in. In comes a Stone Edge. You can see it doesn't even two-shot us. Even with that extra Sacred Sword damage, it's not going to be able to really start threatening our Jellicent anytime soon. Shadow Ball is going to be thrown, puts them into range where I don't think we can really Hex down super easily, but at least the Surf is going to be enough to knock them out. And if they ever swap out here, we're not going to be in the worst spot. We're at 100 energy now, though. They go for a CMP, which means that now this is going to likely be a Stone Edge, and our Jellicent is going to try its best to whittle down not only this Cobalion, but whatever is going to come in with either a Surf or a Shadow Ball. If it is that Golisopod, I can go for a Shadow Ball here and try our best to whittle him down, but it's actually a Guzzlord Pokemon, which our team is a little bit soft to, but because Steelix looks so strong at this point, I can just swap back to Steelix, start spamming out charge moves. We already have 2 Breaking Swipes ready to go. This Guzzlord, despite being a pretty bulky Pokemon, is not going to want to take this super effective damage, and Golisopod really doesn't want to come back in here either, but they are forced back into Golisopod, and now I can Psychic Fangs, go for a full Thunder Fang down, and we should be able to win this game just with really annoying debuff spam, which is exactly what Shadow Steelix is good for. We haven't even used Golisopod yet this game, but at this point, X-Scissor would be enough to knock out that Guzzlord in the backline, so this game should be more than ours. Our opponent realizing they can't reach another move, and they know Guzzlord can't take down Steelix, they end up top lefting. GG's to them. Next matchup, a Talonflame in the lead, a Pokemon which we have a lot of play into. Thunderfang is actually super effective, but I don't really want to stay in that matchup because I know I have 2 water types in the backline, and likely Talonflame is going to be one of their better answers to the Shadow Steelix. I want to save it for later. In comes an Aqua Jet. Our opponent likely is going to have to shield, or else it would do, I don't actually know how much damage it would do from full HP, but it would basically knock them out from here, so it's a good thing that they shield that up. In comes another charge move. Fly does end up getting thrown, and it will draw our first shield. Thankfully for us, not a Flame Charge. Flame Charge would be a little bit more awkward, but because it's just Fly, they're not ramping up their fast food pressure, and we can still outpace them here with Aqua Jet. Our opponent is throwing yet another move right before I get my 3rd Aqua Jet. They might try to make a catch here in just a second. We'll have to keep an eye out if they do stay in this matchup or not. They do end up swapping out. They don't make a catch, but I mean, I am forced to throw energy against a Virizion. This Pokemon is such an awkward pick for my entire team to deal with, but I think we still have play if we land this X-Scissor. We're going to try to make a catch on a Sacred Sword, but our opponent very patient. They end up waiting, and they see the Jellicent come in. Likely that means a Leaf Blade is going to come through, but because Jellicent is so bulky, we're able to tank 2 Leaf Blades pretty easily, go for a Shadow Ball here in just a second, and neutralizes this very tricky Pokemon for our backline to see. Leaf Blade does almost put us into farm down range, honestly, at this point. I'm going to overfarm, go for a Shadow Ball. This might not be enough to knock out, but at this point, it is going to force energy from this Virizion. If they don't want to get Hex down, yeah, they're basically in Hex farm down range there, so we can go and force energy from this Pokemon. I can farm down with either my Shadow Steelix or with my Golisopod. They're 1 Incinerate away from a move on that Talonflame, so I'm going to keep an eye out on the corner. If I ever see Talon come in, I'm going to instantly swap out, go for 1 Shadow Claw and Aqua Jet before they can even reach a charge move. Now this is going to be a complete knockout against Talon. All of their energy down the drain. Their final Pokemon revealed as a Cresselia. That is an interesting pick, a Pokemon that has almost no play into my team. GG's to our opponent. All right, next matchup, we're going to see a Blastoise in the lead. This Pokemon is kind of good for us, right? Obviously, we resist rollout damage. Thunderfang is super effective against him as well, but I don't really like taking Hydro Cannons or having to shield that up with how spammy they are, so I catch a Hydro Cannon on our Golisopod. This might be a weird play, saying that they do have access to super effective rollout, but I think they are likely going to swap out if I make that catch, and it's a good thing that we did end up swapping out because we end up baiting out a Forretress. This Pokemon is a bit tricky for our team to deal with. Steelix isn't the worst matchup in the world. They instantly throw a Rock Tomb here, unfortunately, meaning that we are not able to reach a charge move, or at least a second charge move with our Golisopod. But because they threw energy so early here, I'm going to go for a Psychic Fangs, try to shield once, and hopefully they go for Earthquake. We can farm all the way down and use a ton of energy against the backline. Psychic Fangs obviously does end up landing there. Even if I had Crunch, it wouldn't knock out. I would have needed a full-on Earthquake if I wanted any chance of knocking out Fortress with that attack. In comes a move, hopefully not a Rock Tomb bait. No, thankfully for us, it is an Earthquake. I'm going to try our best to farm this all the way down, and we come out with nearly 100 energy. We take almost no damage from those fast moves, and Blastoise comes back in. Blastoise obviously is going to not want to take any of these charge moves. They are all neutral and non-stab, but they're going to debuff their defense stat over and over and over again. Another Psychic Fangs already being thrown. Our opponent is going to be forced to shield up these moves if they don't want to get knocked out by Thunderfangs, by Psychic Fangs, by basically all of my degen fast move pressure here. In comes yet another Psychic Fangs. Our opponent is now forced to shield that up, and they are forced to throw on bad timing before getting farmed down with Thunderfang. At this point, I'm going to shield up. I want to keep on debuffing things at this point. It might also be the case where Steelix is just really good in the backline. It's a good thing we're keeping Steelix around, because there is an Oranguru in the back, which is potentially one of the worst Pokemon a Jellicent could see, but I'm not even thinking we need Jellicent in this game. We get an attack drop with that Breaking Swipe, which is perfect, and our opponent letting us reach a second Breaking Swipe before even throwing a Trailblaze or potentially either a Foul Play or a Brutal Swing, meaning that we might even get a second attack drop. We don't, but I mean, at this point, we have tripped them down so much that I think our Jellicent could deal with this if it has to, but we are also still using our Steelix. Their attack dropped. A Brutal Swing is going to do nothing to us here, and Steelix should be able to knock them out with this Breaking Swipe or come very close. They do have their Blastoise as a potential debuff clear, but I don't think there's anything they can do at this point. If they ever swap out, I can farm them all the way down, and I can throw a charge move against this Pokemon. They do try to go for a Hydro Cannon, but they don't reach it before getting fully Thunderfang down. They do clear their debuff, but it's Shadow Steelix. It's still pretty bulky, right? We can survive this move. It's a non-stab Trailblaze from a Oranguru. It's going to do nothing to us. Brutal Swing, or Breaking Swipe rather, going to be thrown and knocking out this Psychic and Normal type Pokemon. We don't even need our Jellicent in that match. All right, next matchup here, it's going to be the Malamar in the lead. This is actually a very awkward lead matchup to see. You normally expect a Steel type to beat a Psychic type, but because they have access to Superpower, and because of how much damage these Psywaves honestly are doing, this is not that great of a matchup here. Breaking Swipe does end up going through our opponent, though, not getting debuffed, meaning that this Superpower is going to do a lot of damage. They could bait us with a Foul Play if they're crazy. I'm going to shield it up, though, just hope at this point that it is the Fighting type charge move. We make a nice catch with our Golisopod, and at this point, our opponent is going to be throwing a Superpower that is debuffed into our Bug type Pokemon. It does almost nothing to us here, and we end up baiting out a Skuntank, a Pokemon, which by no means is an issue for Golisopod. It's not the best matchup, obviously, because our Shadow Claws are resisted, but we have such spammy charge moves here that 2 Aqua Jets will be reached before getting completely farmed down. In comes a Trailblaze. It does a decent amount of damage here. It's going to make it so they can farm us all the way down if they so choose, but Aqua Jet already going to be reached. We have the second one as well, and by the time I throw the next move, we can probably come back in with our Shadow Steelix, go for a nice Thunderfang down, and make it so we don't even have to worry about a potential Flamethrower from this Pokemon. We can swap out, go for that Thunderfang down that I was talking about here, but not before our opponent does reach a charge move. Either a Crunch or a Trailblaze is going to be thrown by the Skuntank. Just another Trailblaze likely means that their secondary charge move would have been the Flamethrower charge attack, which is a little bit scary, but thanks to our Steelix being so bulky here, we're still able to survive and go for these Brutal Swings, Breaking Swipes rather, against this Malamar. And comes the attack drop, which is exactly what we want to see, and because I think Shadow Steelix is a very fun and engaging Pokemon, I'm going to shield this up, go for a full Thunderfang down, and use these debuffs against the backline. It's a good thing I did shield, because there is going to be a Golisopod in the back. I really want to see a shield right now, but I don't know if our opponent will or not. If they do no shield, then this game could be a little bit tricky. I make a nice catch on our Jellicent. Nothing that they have is going to do anything more than resisted damage, I guess, unless they're running Aerial Ace, but that move is so bad that it wouldn't even do that much more damage. We end up taking no damage from that Aqua Jet, and now since they are defense drop, these hexes even are adding up quite a bit against this Golisopod. We can go for some Surfs to spam out our charge moves here. These Shadow Claws are ripping through our HP right now, but I am almost at back-to-back Surf. I am one fast attack away from a charge move on our Steelix, and as long as they are down on energy, we should be able to win this game just with fast move pressure as well. Their defense is still dropped, keep that in mind, so these fast moves are doing so much damage, but because they have a lot of energy here, our opponent obviously knows what they have to do. I try to come into our Golisopod to catch a move, or at least force them to make a play here. In comes the Malamar, and they do have back-to-back charge moves on Golisopod. We don't quite farm them down before they can swap out. I come in with our Shadow Steelix. I force him to throw energy against our Shadow Steelix here, and now I have to hope that our Jellicent has enough HP to survive an Aqua Jet and get the Hex down. In comes a charge move. Our opponent is going to have to hope that this Aqua Jet is enough. Does Jellicent survive this charge move? Aqua Jet comes through 1 HP. Our Jellicent just barely picks up the win. GG's to our opponent. All right, next matchup, a Gastrodon in the lead. Probably the worst case scenario, honestly. One of the worst Pokemon we could possibly see here. We say swap with our Jellicent and are met by another very bad Pokemon to see. It is a Shadow Drapion. This Pokemon by no means is something I want to see. It has Crunch, and it is going to be able to easily outpace us to these charge moves. I have these Surfs, which do a decent chunk of damage. Hex as well is adding up, so I think maybe we can win the 0s or 1s, but because this Drapion is going to be able to just outspam us, there is no way I can ever flip Switch Advantage, which means this game is likely going to be a very uphill battle for us. Crunch number 2 does get thrown, and our opponent got back-to-back Crunch debuffs, which means at this point they can go straight Aqua Tail too, which makes our life even harder. Surf comes through, our opponent likely will have to shield this up, but the next one will come through in just a second. Our opponent overfarms. I was going to throw on alignment, thinking they might go for the alignment play as well, but we both just overfarmed through on good timing instead. Aqua Tail does draw our shield. I have another Surf ready to go, but thanks to these 2 defense drops at this point, I'm pretty sure this next Aqua Tail will knock us out, and Switch Advantage will go in favor of this Shadow Drapion. They instantly throw the Aqua Tail. I can try to go for a nice Thunderfangs down here, but because at this point they're going to reach another Aqua Tail, our Steelix is going to be tripped down, and we still know there's a Gastrodon, which is going to be very tricky to take down with our Steelix. Aqua Tail is going to land against our Shadow Steelix. It's not going to do a lot of damage, but it's a decent amount of chip damage against us, which means there's a lot less work for Gastrodon to do, and we save up our Golisopod hoping for something with some sort of play, but no, it's going to be a Mandibuzz, about as RPS as it can be. All right, next matchup here, it's going to be a Forretress in the lead. A pretty good lead matchup, although it is a little bit awkward. I have a lot of fast move pressure, almost no charge move pressure. This Forretress, on the other hand, has a lot of charge move pressure, very little fast move pressure into us. So this matchup, the longer it goes on, the better it is for Steelix, but I don't really want to let a full Earthquake go. I'm going to just try to call a Rock Tomb bait, seeming that it could have been a bit of a likely bait there, but our opponent does go for that full-on Earthquake, doing quite a bit of damage to us, and making it so our Steelix is going to be in a bit of a tricky spot. With that said, they just shielded up a Psychic Fangs there, which is exactly what we want to see. Psychic Fangs would have done almost nothing to them, but they thought it might be an Earthquake, and our opponent did respect that charge attack. In comes another Psychic Fangs here. I could shield up this move and go either for a full farm down, or I might have to go for a Psychic Fangs, but at this point, an Earthquake is going to be thrown. I'm going to try to overfarm as much as I can. I don't think I can quite go for a full farm down before the next Earthquake will be reached, so instead I'll throw a Breaking Swipe, which does do a bit more raw damage, and knock out this Forretress. At this point, I have revealed my moveset, which is maybe a bad idea. Maybe I should have just gone straight Psychic Fangs, but because I can go for a Psychic Fangs once again against this Runerigus, I guess, Runerigus, I don't have any idea how to pronounce that Pokemon. I almost never see it in the Go Bad League. With that said, at this point, just save swap our Golisopod, knowing we don't want to give that thing a farm down, and we can go for Aqua Jets against this Moltres. I know they could go for Ancient Power here. It is super effective, but if they want to win the zeros very hard, they have to go for Brave Bird. I'm going to shield, and our opponent full sends the heavy-hitting charge move. Because of that, I can outpace them before they even reach another Ancient Power, go for an Aqua Jet against this, and that Ruin in the backline is going to be in for some trouble. We have Aqua Jet that knocks them out. We have Aqua Jet, which will get a shield from this Pokemon, and because at this point, our Jellicent is such a bulky attacker, I know we can survive a Shadow Ball from them, and our Hexes and Shadow Ball will knock them out, especially after our chip damage that we've already done. This could be a Brutal Swing Shadow Ball, maybe a Rock Tomb. Yeah, Rock Tomb going to be thrown, likely meaning they are running Shadow Ball and Rock Tomb as their charge moves, so not exactly the spammiest moveset out there, but a very interesting one nonetheless. Let's see how much damage Ruin can end up doing here to our Jellicent. I'm actually kind of interested. It's a very interesting matchup, but we are able to survive and go for a Shadow Ball to knock out this Ruin, taking the win, and our Jellicent able to close that one out. GG's to our opponent there. All right, next matchup, we're going to see Shadow Steelix up against Shadow Golurk, a different Ghost and Ground type, a much harder Ghost and Ground type Pokemon to take down. I'm going to save up our Golisopod and hope that our opponent doesn't really have a great answer to us. They come in with a non-Shadow Drapion. Very interesting Pokemon to see here. I go for an Aqua Jet, and I'm going to try our best to get shields down, or maybe get Switch Advantage if I can. With that said, Switch is not the most important thing for us this game, mainly because I know at this point, Jellicent down shields doesn't really want to take Shadow Punches either, so going down shields to get Switch wouldn't really be an option for us this game. Aqua Jet is going to try its best to draw shields from this Drapion. If we do get a shield, I'd probably just let our Golisopod go to this Drapion, and if we get a no shield, maybe I want to play out an extra shield matchup here, but no. I'm just going to hope for an Aqua Tail bait, see what they're going to do, and then farm down with our Shadow Steelix. This is going to be an interesting endgame. It's going to be down to Jellicent to really make some magic happen here. I get a full Thunderfang down against them, though, likely meaning they were running Sludge Bomb as their secondary move. In comes that Golurk. Once again, this Pokemon is such a tricky pick to see, but Hex is doing quite a bit of damage to them, and I can go for Surfs to potentially get shields from them, or maybe put them into a range with my Hexes where Breaking Swipe or Psychic Fangs could knock them out later on. Surf is going to come through. Our opponent can't really shield this up unless they want to invest everything in their Golurk right now. It looks like they are going to shield a CMP on this Surf, meaning that if they do end up letting this go, then I am going to be able to knock them out, and if they do shield it, then my Breaking Swipe might just be enough to win us this game. Surf on CMP, I survive Shadow Punch, and now Jellicent is likely going to draw the second shield from this Golurk. I try to go for a Breaking Swipe against them, but they still have a lot of energy on that Golurk. I can't shield this Lapras. I have to hope at this point that I can knock them out before they're able to get a shield from us. In comes the first move. I go for a Psychic Fangs to debuff their defense stat. I'm then going to go for a Breaking Swipe to try to debuff their attack. They haven't thrown any charge moves against us just yet. Breaking Swipe comes through. Our opponent gets the attack drop against them, meaning that now 2 Sparkling Arias are not going to be enough to knock out. Because of this, just in case they had a Dynamic Punch on that Golurk, I don't even have to worry about shielding anything from this Pokemon. I can go for a Breaking Swipe when that Golurk comes back in, and then Thunderfang down all the way against this Lapras. In comes the Golurk. We're able to go for a Breaking Swipe before they get that Mud Slap to register. It should knock them out here, and now we fast move down the rest of this game. Lapras comes back in. We have a full Thunderfang down here. We go for it. Lapras is not enough for our Steelix. GG's to our opponent there. Very interesting game, very interesting set of battles here just in general with Golisopod. It's a very fun safe swap in this meta. There's not a lot of things that it hard beats, but because of its flexibility with Shadow Claw, X-Scissor, and Aqua Jet, it's one of the safest swaps that I've really found in this meta. It's a very fun pick, a very flexible pick, and a Pokemon that I definitely recommend trying out if you have one. Alright, well, thank you so much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed the battles and you want to see more content like this in the future, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe. It helps out the channel a ton, and I would really appreciate it. Thank you again, though, for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.